Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. Arizona certified its midterm election results today, almost a month after Election Day. Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who beat GOP candidate Kari Lake in the governor's race, helped to certify the results, along with Governor Doug Ducey and 2 other state officials. Some Republican-controlled counties delayed certification despite no proven evidence of vote tampering. Today's certification, however, does open up a 5-day window for formal election challenges. For more on this, we are joined now by Arizona Assistant Secretary of State Allie Bones. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. So, as I mentioned, the certification today opens up a 5-day window for any sort of challenges to the results. What exactly do you think that we may see in the coming days?
Hi. So, yeah, it looks like we will see a few election contests that come forward. And this is pretty normal for us in this 5-day window that we see election contests brought. But from what we understand, there will probably be a refiling of the case that Attorney General Abe Hamada brought last week that was deemed premature by the courts, that we'll see that again. And then all indications are pointing that Kari Lake will also bring an election contest this week.
And do you have any sense of what will happen with those, asks for reviews or lawsuits, or what these campaigns may be asking for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we are sure exactly what they'll be asking for. We hope that whatever it is that they bring forward, any evidence that they have, that the court is able to review those cases. But our office is prepared to receive any challenges that are brought forward by any candidates or parties to this election, and we'll be ready to proceed.
But nothing that will, in your view, change the results of the elections?
Yeah, I mean, it is incredibly rare for a situation to change the result of any election. Again, they're going to have to bring forward any evidence or any, foul play or any conduct that was not following the law. And I think that they're going to find that that just does not exist.
This cycle, CBS News was tracking those who were denying the last election. This CBS News found about over 300 people running for state and local offices were so-called election deniers. And Arizona was really kind of ground zero for a lot of that effort. As we saw, several of the prominent ones, including Kari Lake, did not succeed. But, they did get to a point where they were winning primaries, getting a sizable share of the vote. What do you think it is about Arizona that helped to propel these candidates and then ultimately stopped them from winning?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, as you said, Arizona has been kind of ground zero for this election denialism. And so, unfortunately, we do have a lot of folks in the state that have believed a lot of the lies around election administration, and that there are problems with it, or that there's somehow fraud occurring. But again, there is no evidence of that. Elections officials in Arizona have been conducting these elections with integrity and transparency throughout the entire process. And we're going to continue to do so. We need to make sure that elections are secure and accurate and accessible, and that people have the ability to use their voice and exercise their right to vote. So, we're going to continue to provide that level of transparency and integrity, and make sure that voters know. We invite them in to understand these processes and how things are done and what backup plans elections officials have, because, we know that from time to time things might go wrong. And that's why we contingency plan and expect that, something else might need to happen on an election day, any given day.
So there's been no evidence of widespread fraud in Arizona. You are going to be joining the governor-elect, Katie Hobbs, as her chief of staff when she becomes governor. Are there any changes that you would like to see, or that she would like to see, to how elections are done in Arizona?
Yeah, so we will be looking very closely, as we do anytime there's an election, have a postmortem and work with the counties and the incoming Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, and we'll work together along with him and the Attorney General on updating the 2019 election procedures manual before 2024 happens. And I think it's really important that we rely on the expertise and knowledge of elections officials about what is feasible, what will help ensure the integrity and security of our elections while maintaining accessibility for people who want to exercise their right to vote. We're not going to be looking at anything that really limits people's ability to access the ballot box, but we want to make sure that, we are prepared and ready to deal with any challenges that might come up. Elections are run by humans and things do happen from time to time, but what really is the measure is how ready we are to address those challenges as they occur. And I think even though we saw many challenges in Maricopa County on election day, they were ready, they had backup plans. It's really upon us as elections officials to make sure that the voter knows what those options are and that they trust the elections officials to do their jobs.
And another dynamic, an unfortunate dynamic that we've been seeing throughout this past election cycle is this idea that election workers are being threatened and still are coming under threat. I'm curious if you think that the way in which a lot of these election deniers lost in Arizona might put that to rest, or do you anticipate these threats continuing?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are continuing to see a lot of heated rhetoric in these days around the certification of the elections that I think that we will continue to see for some time. But I also think that it's important that people who have the opportunity to kind of tamp down that rhetoric need to really take that opportunity to do so. And really, I think that it's incumbent upon other officials, particularly the courts, to hold accountable those actors who would continue to perpetuate misinformation and disinformation that is leading to a lot of these attacks and threats. So I'm hopeful that over time that we can see some of these things abate, but as from what we're seeing right now, I think it's going to take some more time.
All right, Arizona's Assistant Secretary of State, Allie Bones, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.